Welcome back to Western Flavors, everyone. We're diving right back into the incredible story of Ty's return in part 3 of our series. If you're just joining us, make sure to catch up on parts 1 and 2 to fully experience the emotional roller coaster. If you love Heartland, please give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe to Western Flavors for more stories and content from the ranch. In the following day after Ty's return, a fragile quiet had settled over Heartland. A stark contrast to the whirlwind of disbelief and raw emotion that had defined the previous 24 hours. Ty moved with a newfound stillness, the weight of his own impossible existence heavy in the air. The reality of his return was still too vast for anyone to fully comprehend. Seeing him suffocating within the four walls of the house, pacing like a phantom, Amy knew they needed to escape. A ride, just the two of them, felt like the only way to find a pocket of air to breathe in a world that had become overwhelmingly small. She found him in the barn, staring at Spartan's stall with an unreadable expression.
"Let's go for a ride."
Her voice was soft, but it was an invitation, not a question.
"Just up to the ridge. The air is clear up there."
He looked at her, and for the first time since he'd stepped out of that taxi, a flicker of something other than pain or confusion crossed his face. It was relief. Out on the trail, surrounded by the familiar whisper of wind through the aspens, they could almost pretend the last 24 hours hadn't happened. Here, there were no watching eyes, no impossible questions to answer. There was only the steady, rhythmic gait of their horses and the cool, clean scent of pine and damp earth. They rode in silence, but it was a silence that felt necessary, a space for the raw, overstimulated emotions of the previous day to finally settle. They stopped in a small clearing where a stream trickled over mossy stones, letting Spartan and Harley drink from the cool water. Ty dismounted, his movement still carrying the memory of his ordeal. He leaned against a tall pine, watching Amy, the calm center of this chaotic new universe.
"Sometimes,"
Amy said, breaking the quiet, her voice thoughtful as she stroked Spartan's neck.
"even just since yesterday, I'll turn around in the kitchen expecting to be alone, and there you are. It's like my heart has to break and mend itself all over again in the same second."
Ty nodded, the sentiment achingly familiar even after such a short time.
I feel the same way.
He admitted, his voice low.
Except I'm the one who feels like he's not really here. I'm just watching. Watching you, Jack, Lindy. It's like I'm a ghost at my own homecoming.
He picked up a loose piece of bark from the tree, his fingers testing its rough surface. The vulnerability of the quiet forest, of being truly alone with her for the first time, emboldened him to ask the question that had been forming in the back of his mind since he first saw her face again. He looked at Amy, his eyes shadowed with a deep, painful-to-witness sorrow.
Amy. My mom.
He paused, swallowing hard against the lump forming in his throat.
When she heard I was gone, how was she?
Amy's hand stilled on Spartan's mane. She turned to face him, her expression soft with a sad understanding. She knew this question was not just about curiosity, it was about his need to map the geography of the pain his absence had caused. She walked over, leaning against the tree beside him, their shoulders almost touching.
"It was hard, Ty."
She began, choosing her words with care.
"Wade was the one who called Jack. He was trying to hold it together, but his voice was just broken. He said when he told Lily, she didn't scream or cry at first. She just went quiet, completely silent."
She took a shaky breath, the memory still vivid and painful.
"He said it was the scariest thing he'd ever seen. She just sat in her chair and stared at the wall, and nothing he said could get through to her. It was later that the sound came. Wade told me once. He said it was a sound he'll never forget. Not a cry of sadness, but something deeper. Something hollowed out, like a part of her soul had been scooped out, leaving nothing behind."
Ty squeezed his eyes shut, his knuckles white as he gripped the piece of bark. He could picture it. He could picture his mother, so fragile to begin with, simply collapsing in on herself.
"For weeks,"
Amy continued, her voice thick with emotion.
"Wade said she wouldn't leave her room. She wouldn't eat. It was like her light just went out. He was terrified he was going to lose her too. It took a long, long time for him to coax her back. She's better now, but that kind of break, Ty, it doesn't ever truly heal. It just scars over.
He didn't reply. He couldn't. He just stood there, the quiet sounds of the forest fading away, replaced by the roar of his own guilt and sorrow. He had needed to know, but the reality of it was a knife twisting in his gut. He had spent his life trying to protect his mother from pain, only to become the source of her greatest one. Amy saw the devastation on his face. And in that moment, a new, fierce resolve solidified within her. They had only been reunited for a day, but leaving Lily and Wade in that state of false grief for a moment longer felt like an unbearable cruelty. The quiet healing in the woods was over. It was time to act. The ride back from the woods was heavy with a new, unspoken mission. The quiet sorrow that had enveloped them in the forest clearing had been sharpened into a point of sheer urgency. Every plodding step of their horses felt like a moment stolen, a moment Lily was still living in the dark. Amy rode with a fierce determination in her eyes. The abstract need to help had become a concrete plan, and she would not let it rest. Ty was quieter, the devastating knowledge of his mother's pain having hollowed him out, leaving him feeling both responsible and powerless. They didn't unsaddle the horses. They left them tethered outside the barn and walked with purpose directly to the main house. They found Jack in the living room, a book resting in his lap, his expression serene until he saw their faces. He knew instantly that the quiet ride had changed something. Amy didn't hesitate. She stood before him, her hands clasped together to keep them from trembling.
Jack, we have to tell them.
Her voice was low, but carried the clear, ringing tone of conviction.
We have to call Lily and Wade. Today, right now. We can't let this go on.
Jack looked from Amy's resolute face to Ty, who lingered by the doorway, looking pale and haunted. He saw the story of their conversation in their eyes. He nodded slowly, closing his book and setting it aside.
You're right, Amy. It's the only right thing to do.
He looked toward Ty, his voice softening with understanding.
But we have to be smart about it. We can't just call out of the blue and drop a miracle on her. A shock like that. For Lily.
He didn't need to finish the sentence. Ty spoke up, his voice raspy.
He's right. A phone call. She'll think it's a cruel prank, or worse. It has to be Wade. He has to be the one to tell her, to be there with her.
Then that's what we'll do,
Jack said, rising from his chair. He moved with a comforting authority, a steady presence taking charge of the chaotic emotions swirling around them.
I'll make the call. I'll speak to Wade, man to man. We'll figure this out.
He walked to the old phone in the kitchen, its presence a familiar and grounding anchor in the house. Amy and Ty followed, standing in the doorway and watching as Jack picked up the receiver and deliberately dialed the number. The air grew thick and still with anticipation, each ring of the phone on the other end echoing the frantic pounding of their own hearts.
Wade.
Jack's voice was a calm, steady rumble, a stark contrast to the tension in the room.
It's Jack Bartlett. I'm calling from Heartland.
He paused, letting the weight of his identity sink in, knowing it would signal the gravity of the call.
I need you to listen to me very carefully. If you're not sitting down, you should be.
Jack's eyes were fixed on a point on the far wall, his entire being focused on the man on the other end of the line.
It's about Ty.
He let another heavy silence hang in the air, a space for Wade to brace himself.
He's alive, Wade. I swear on my life, he's here with me now, at the ranch.
Even from across the room, they could hear the faint, sharp sound of Wade's choked-off gasp through the receiver. Jack listened patiently, his expression unchanging, letting the impossible news land. He was a rock in the middle of a tidal wave.
I know it sounds impossible, but it's the truth. He's here.
He continued to listen, nodding slowly as Wade's frantic, disbelieving questions surely poured through the line.
That's why I'm calling you first. I agree. Absolutely not. Do not tell her over the phone. That's the last thing any of us want.
A plan was being forged in that moment, a desperate strategy between two men united in their need to protect the people they loved.
Right.
Jack said, his voice gaining a new note of quiet command.
You get in the car. You tell her whatever you need to tell her to get her here, without a panic. Tell her I need help with a horse, that there's a family emergency, whatever it takes. Just get her here safely. We'll handle the rest when you arrive.
He paused one last time, listening.
Drive safe, Wade. We'll be waiting.
Jack placed the receiver back in its cradle with a soft, final click. The silence that rushed back in was somehow heavier than before. He turned to face a wide-eyed Amy and a pale, shell-shocked Ty. His face was grim, but his eyes were resolute.
He's bringing her,
he said, his words landing with the weight of destiny.
They're leaving now. He's not going to tell her why they're coming until they get here.
The immediate problem of how to tell them was solved, but it had been replaced by a new, more terrifying one. A countdown had begun. A storm was on its way to Heartland, and they had no choice but to stand and face it. The hours that followed the phone call were the longest Amy had ever experienced. A heavy, anxious stillness descended upon the Heartland ranch, a stark contrast to the chaotic joy and disbelief that should have defined the day. A miracle had occurred, but they couldn't celebrate it. They could only wait. The knowledge that Wade and Lily were on the road, hurtling towards a life-altering revelation, made the air thick with a unique, agonizing suspense. Ty was a ghost, drifting from room to room, unable to settle. He'd stand at the window, staring down the long driveway as if he could will their car to appear, then turn away, his face pale with a dread so profound it was almost paralyzing. He was about to be reunited with his mother, but under a cloud of deception he felt responsible for, even though it was designed to protect her. Amy stayed close, a quiet shadow offering silent support, her presence a steady anchor in his turbulent sea of emotion. She refilled his coffee, spoke to him in low, soothing tones about the horses, about anything at all, trying to keep him tethered to the present moment and not lost to the overwhelming what-if of the hours to come. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Wade gripped the steering wheel, the monotonous ribbon of the highway stretching out before him. Beside him, Lily was a bundle of nervous energy, her mind consumed by the fabricated emergency.
Are you sure Jack is all right?
She asked for the 10th time, her voice tight with worry.
He just said he took a bit of a fall working on a fence, needed an extra pair of hands for a few days.
Wade recited the lie, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He felt a profound guilt for deceiving her, but it was overshadowed by the terrifying weight of the truth he was hiding. The miracle of Ty's survival was a precious, explosive secret he carried. One wrong move, one careless word, and the shock could shatter her. He had to prepare her, subtly, gently. He fumbled through a small case of old CDs, pulling one out. It was a worn, scratched disc with Ty's mix scrawled on it in faded marker. He slid it into the car's player. An old rock song, one Ty had played endlessly one summer, filled the car. Lily fell silent. A sad, wistful smile touched her lips.
Oh, I haven't heard this one in ages.
She murmured, turning to look out the window at the passing mountains.
Ty loved this song.
The first seed was planted. Wade's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his voice casual.
Yeah, just found it in the glove box. Funny what you forget you have.
An hour later, as they drove through a particularly beautiful valley, he tried again.
You know, this stretch of road? It reminds me of that fishing trip we all took. When Ty was so determined to teach you how to cast a line and you almost caught his hat.
Lily laughed, a small, watery sound.
He had the patience of a saint with me that day. I miss that. I miss his laugh.
Her voice broke on the last word. Wade reached over and squeezed her hand, a silent, aching apology for the pain he was both soothing and about to reignite. He was stirring the embers of her grief, hoping to warm her soul just enough so that the eventual blaze of truth wouldn't consume her entirely. By the time their dusty car finally turned onto the long driveway of Heartland, night had fallen. The house was lit up, a beacon of warmth against the encroaching darkness. Jack and Amy were waiting on the porch, their faces illuminated, looking tense and unnaturally solemn. Lily got out of the car, her brow furrowed in confusion. The atmosphere was all wrong. It wasn't the managed chaos of a minor injury. It was something else, something heavy and profound.
Wade, what's going on?
She asked, her voice trembling slightly as she looked at the grim faces on the porch.
Where's the emergency? Is Jack hurt?
Wade came to her side, taking her arm gently. His own heart was pounding. The moment was here.
The emergency isn't what you think, Lily.
He said, his voice thick with emotion.
It's more like a miracle.
Jack and Amy descended the steps, their expressions a mixture of deep sympathy and unbearable anticipation. Amy spoke, her voice soft.
Lily, we're so glad you're here. There's someone here, someone who wanted to see you.
The hints, the music, the memories from the drive all swirled in Lily's mind. A wild, impossible hope, a feeling she hadn't dared to feel in 2 long years, began to flicker within her. Her eyes scanned the porch, past Jack, past Amy, to the shadows of the open doorway behind them. And in those shadows, she saw a familiar silhouette, a figure she knew as well as her own reflection. He took a single, hesitant step forward into the light. For a long, suspended moment, the world held its breath. The figure in the doorway was bathed in the warm, golden light of the house, a stark silhouette against the deep blue of the evening. Lily's mind reeled, trying to reconcile the impossible. The hints from the long car ride, the music, Wade's gentle talk of memories collided with the tense atmosphere on the porch and the sight of this man, a man who wore the face of a ghost, a man she had buried in the deepest, most sacred part of her heart. Her brain screamed that it was a trick of the light, a cruel mirage conjured from her own bottomless grief. But then he moved. He took a single, hesitant step forward, and the light caught his features fully. The face was thinner, etched with lines of hardship she didn't recognize, but the eyes, those were the same eyes that had looked up at her from her cradle. They were her son's eyes. A small, choked gasp escaped her lips. Her hand flew to her mouth, her legs suddenly weak beneath her. Wade's hand was instantly on her back, steadying her. The figure on the porch spoke, and his voice, though rough and strained with emotion, was the sound she had longed to hear every single day for 2 agonizing years.
Mom.
That one word shattered the dam. The disbelief, the confusion, the carefully constructed walls she had built around her broken heart, they all came crashing down at once. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't a dream. It was him.
Ty?
She whispered his name, the sound fragile, questioning. Then, with more certainty, a sob breaking through.
Ty!
She began to move, her steps clumsy and uncoordinated at first, like someone learning to walk again. She stumbled forward across the yard, her arms outstretched, her eyes locked on his, never once blinking, as if afraid he might vanish into the darkness if she did. He met her halfway, closing the last few feet of distance in a rush, and then they collided. It wasn't a gentle embrace. It was a collision of past and present, of grief and joy so immense it was indistinguishable from pain. Lily wrapped her arms around him, clinging to him with a desperate, primal strength, her face buried in his chest. A storm of sobs racked her body, the tears she had shed at his funeral now answered by this impossible, miraculous warmth of his presence. She was touching him, holding him, assuring herself that he was real, solid here.
My boy?
She wept, her voice muffled against his shirt.
Oh, my baby boy. You're real. You're here.
Ty's own defenses, so rigidly held for 2 long years of survival and for the last 2 days of impossible stress, finally crumbled. He held his mother, the familiar scent of her, the feel of her small frame in his arms, a grounding force that brought him crashing back to earth. The guilt, the sorrow, the relief. It all poured out of him in silent, streaming tears. He buried his face in her hair, holding her as if he could pour all of his apologies, all of his love, all of his pain, directly into her through his embrace.
I'm here, Mom.
He managed to choke out, his voice thick and broken.
I'm here. I'm home.
From the porch, The rest of the family watched, giving them their moment. Wade stood with his hand over his heart, tears running freely down his face as he watched the woman he loved receive the one thing that could ever truly make her whole again. Jack stood tall, his posture unbending, but the glint of moisture in his eyes under the porch light betrayed his profound relief. And Amy wept with them. She wept for Lily's joy, for Ty's release, and for the beautiful, heartbreaking, miraculous reality of this impossible reunion. After a long time, the desperate sobs quieted into shuddering breaths. Lily pulled back, her hands coming up to frame Ty's face, her thumbs tracing his features as if memorizing him all over again. She looked into his eyes, and what she saw there was not a ghost, but her son, scarred and changed, but alive, truly alive. The long journey was over. The secret was out. The deepest wound had finally been addressed, not with words, but with the undeniable truth of a mother holding her child. The ghost who had haunted Heartland was gone, replaced by a son who had, against all odds, found his way back. And for the first time since he had stepped out of that taxi, Ty felt the profound, soul-deep certainty of it. He was home. And then let us know what you think will happen in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and make sure you subscribe to Heartland Flavors and turn on notifications, because you will not want to miss this shocking turn of events.